I know exactly that I'm not confused. 3 days ago, there was exactly $1,000 in my wallet. This morning, only a few crumpled bills were left, and the only person who could sneak into my room in the middle of the night is my son-in-law, Cleo. I saw the look in his eyes when I mentioned the missing money. He crossed his arms, glaring at me. "Are you accusing me of stealing? I work 16 hours a day. Why would I steal from you?" His words were sharp as a knife, but fear was clearly hiding behind his angry facade. Helen, my daughter, quickly stepped in to defend him. "Dad, Cleo would never do that." "Maybe you just forgot where you put it." "Forgot? I've lived my whole life as an engineer, used to accounting for every penny, remembering every detail. I might forget an appointment or skip lunch, but I would never forget $1,000 in my wallet. When Cleo gave Helen a sparkling gold necklace that very evening, I understood. Real gold, shining under the living room light, and its price matched perfectly the amount that had disappeared. He thought I would turn a blind eye, that I was just a lonely old man, weak and powerless to resist. But Cleo miscalculated. I am no longer a broken man, widowed and living in memories. I am Lester Hargrove, an engineer used to solving every problem with absolute precision. And this time, the problem is the son-in-law living under my roof. He thinks stealing money is an easy game, but he doesn't know that tonight I will start a plan he will never forget. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, the morning light filtering through the thin curtain casting long, cold streaks across the floor. In my hand, the old leather wallet lay open, revealing an empty space that felt like a raw wound refusing to heal. I've kept it for nearly half a century. So many years as an engineer, every paycheck, every saving carefully placed inside. It's not just an item, it's memories, it's habits, a part of my life's. Yet this morning, when I counted again, $1,000 had vanished. I tried to fool myself. Maybe I spent it somewhere and forgot. But how much do I spend on groceries each week? A cup of morning coffee at Murphy's is only $3, at most $7. $1,000 can't just vanish over trivial things like that. The harsh truth was right before my eyes, but the real pain was elsewhere. Someone had brazenly entered my room, opened my wallet, and taken the money I worked hard for. And I knew that person was living under the same roof. That afternoon, the three of us gathered in the living room. Helen, my daughter, was folding a pile of shirts, softly humming. I pretended to focus on the newspaper, but my eyes kept following every move Cleo made. He paced back and forth, adjusted the curtains, checked the mirror, scrolled on his phone. There was a restless energy in his movements, like his body couldn't stay still for a second. Then he suddenly stopped in front of Helen, his smile too bright for his usual tiredness. "I got this for you," he said, holding out a red velvet box. Helen opened it curiously and exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's beautiful." A gold necklace sparkled under the light. Real gold, heavy, definitely worth at least $800. I knew because I've spent my whole life noticing and distinguishing every little detail. That money couldn't have come from the weekend overtime he bragged about. I quietly closed the newspaper, hiding the trembling in my hands. "Do they pay that well?" I asked calmly. Cleo hesitated briefly, then lifted his chin. "The warehouse is out on 8 Mile. New contract with Ford. Dangerous, but good money. I do it so the family can have a better life." Helen believed him immediately, hugging him tightly, tears of happiness streaming down her face. I looked at my daughter, my heart tightening. She was happy because of a gift bought with the very money her father had stolen. That humiliation almost made me choke. I went upstairs, pretending to be tired. But I couldn't sleep all night. The laughter and voices of the couple downstairs echoed like needles piercing my heart. I realized if I stayed silent, this would keep happening. Maybe even worse. 3 weeks later, another $500 disappeared. This time, I carefully recorded every amount, every day. I'm sure I'm not mistaken. Cleo repeated the old trick, taking money, then pretending to work overtime. I decided I couldn't just sit still anymore. I drove to an electronics store downtown and bought a hidden camera that connects to a phone. 40 years as an engineer taught me that technology never lies. That night, I hid the camera behind Helen's wedding photo, aimed right at the wallet on the nightstand. I put $300 in the wallet, enough to tempt someone who thinks they're smart. I locked my door, pretended to go to sleep. But my heart pounded as I waited. At 2:47 a.m., the alarm buzzed softly in my jacket pocket. I opened my phone and stared at the screen. A shadow appeared in the dim infrared light. The door opened and a familiar figure stepped inside. Cleo! He walked over confidently, as if he knew this path well. He opened the wallet, took the money, and counted it quickly. Then, he bent down, grabbed the glass of water nearby, and spat right into it. I was stunned. This was no longer theft. This was humiliation. I turned off the screen and sat still in the dark. A cold chill spread through me. From that moment, I knew I'd reached a breaking point, a point of no return. I was no longer a lost widower, despised in his own home. I am Lester Hargrove, a man who's spent his life solving problems with reason and precision, and the problem in front of me now was Cleo. He thinks I'm old, confused, and easy to manipulate, but he's wrong. Completely wrong. The next morning, I woke up early, the tension still tight like a stretched string inside me. The newspaper on the nightstand was still unopened, and my reading glasses lay neatly in their case beside it. The video from last night kept replaying in my mind, Cleo sneaking into the room, taking the money, then spitting in the glass, a terrifying act of humiliation. As I walked down the stairs, I felt like a man who has realized he's been betrayed, but still has to live under the same roof. That feeling lingered like a fog, hard to escape. Helen stood in the kitchen, slicing bread for breakfast. She turned to look at me, smiling sweetly. "Good morning, Dad. Did you sleep well?" "Good, very good, my child." That trust made me feel like I was carrying the heaviest burden in life. How could I tell her that her husband, my son-in-law, had been secretly stealing money from me all this time? The truth was too cruel to face. Cleo came into the kitchen, looking at me calmly. His gaze was full of challenge. He knew. I knew exactly what had happened last night, but he said nothing, just silently sat at the table and started eating breakfast, as if everything was fine. I couldn't understand it. How could he live so comfortably when everything was so clear? I sat down, feeling disgust like a block of ice freezing my chest. Part of me wanted to rush at him, slap him in the face, and expose everything in front of Helen. But part of me held back, not wanting to tear this family apart immediately. I had only one choice: to wait. Wait for clearer evidence. Wait until I could make the right decision. And most importantly, I wanted the full truth before breaking everything apart. That day I followed Cleo closely. He went to work as usual, but I knew he was hiding something. I decided to follow him a bit. After he left the house, I drove to the neighborhood he often visited. I had heard him mention a warehouse outside 8 Mile, but I didn't believe those words. When I arrived, I saw him standing in front of a small electronics store, the dim neon light from the sign reflecting on the street. He went into the store, bought something, then hurried outside. I didn't know what he bought, but his actions looked like someone doing something illegal. Cleo came back late in the afternoon, and I had already set a trap. I installed a surveillance camera right where he usually passes by, hoping to gather more evidence. At night, I pretended to sleep, but my eyes stayed open. I waited every minute with the patience of a former engineer. At 1 in the morning, familiar footsteps echoed from the stairs. Cleo sneaked into my room as if everything was normal, but this time, he didn't take any money from my wallet. He stood there, glancing around stealthily, then ran his hand over the wallet to check if I had opened it. I watched through the camera and saw he still didn't take anything. But my worry grew stronger inside. Cleo didn't do anything except check my wallet. Had he changed his approach, or was he preparing a bigger move? The next morning, I didn't rush to speak or act. I wanted to see what he would do next. But when Cleo walked into the kitchen, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Where did you go last night?" I asked, calm but probing. Cleo raised his eyebrows, looking a bit tense. "Why do you need to ask?" "I was working." This act won't last long. The more tense things get, the more Cleo's true nature shows. We sat eating breakfast in silence. Every bite of cake, every sip of coffee carried the pain of betrayal, but I knew things wouldn't be the same anymore. It's just a matter of time. I won't let myself be fooled again. It's no longer about the thousands of dollars in the wallet. It's about respect. It's about patience. And most importantly, I won't let Cleo keep playing with this family anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning over everything that had happened. Cleo, my son-in-law, seemed to be revealing his true nature more and more. He deceived me not just once, but many times, and now everything is clearer than ever. I just need a little more time to gather enough evidence so the truth can't be denied. I still remember the morning after Cleo went to work. I couldn't help but notice the changes in his behavior. He no longer worked with the same caution as before. His words became rushed, and sometimes his eyes would avoid mine when we faced each other. Even when I asked about the warehouse job outside 8 Mile, he didn't answer directly, but changed the subject. He could no longer hide his fear. That day, I decided to learn more about the warehouse he said he worked at. I drove through 8 Mile to the area he mentioned. There, I didn't see any sign of Cleo, but the questions in my mind only grew. Why was he talking about a warehouse I had never heard of? Why did he get so nervous facing my questions? Everything started to feel suspicious. When I returned home, I couldn't stop thinking about the little details Cleo couldn't hide. That night, I installed a hidden camera, but this time I didn't just put it in my wallet. I placed it in places Cleo often went: the living room, near the dining table, even in the bathroom. He had no idea that I was slowly seeing through every move he made. I knew he wouldn't give up. Cleo is a con artist, but he's also very cunning. If I'm not careful, I could lose everything. I have to be patient. I won't reveal my suspicions, at least not yet. The next morning, I reviewed all the videos capturing Cleo's actions. He kept his habit of taking money from my wallet, but this time something was different. He left a small note that read, "Everything has its reason." Those words were not just a hint, but a challenge, a confirmation of what he had done. That feeling sent chills down my spine. I used to think I could face betrayal, but the way Cleo challenged me, challenged this whole family, stressed me out so much I couldn't stop thinking about it. I can't let him keep going like this. He didn't just take my money, he played with the family's trust. I can't accept that. I decided I had to confront him. But I didn't want to do it in anger. I wanted to be subtle about it. I want Cleo to realize that no matter how much he hides, the truth will come out. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the living room, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen. I saw Cleo sneak past the room like a hunting wolf. But he didn't know that everything he did was clearly recorded. I gave a bitter smile, a sad smile. He thought he could keep fooling me forever, but I wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, I decided to confront him. No more hiding, no more excuses. I had everything ready, just waiting for him to confess. Cleo! I called him while he was drinking coffee in the kitchen. He turned around, a flash of panic in his eyes, but he quickly regained his confidence. "What's up, old man?" he asked. "Yesterday, I found this note in your wallet." I placed the note on the table, eyes locked on him. "What's the reason?" "Cleo, why did you take my money?" Cleo looked at the note, then at me, the confident light in his eyes fading. I only did it because I had no choice," he stammered. "Those were hard times, I couldn't bear it." But his answer only made it clearer that Cleo not only betrayed me, but also lied to my daughter, the one he always saw as his support. I didn't rush or respond immediately. I just let him feel the truth. "Don't think I don't know everything you've done. Do you think you're so smart?" He fell silent, as if accepting his fate. And I knew, at that moment, Cleo's mask began to slip. The following days passed in heavy silence. Cleo said nothing more after that conversation. He kept silent, but his awkwardness couldn't be hidden from his eyes and gestures. Meanwhile, Helen remained innocent, completely unaware of the truth slowly coming to light. I didn't want to break up this family, but I couldn't keep living a lie either. The next morning, Cleo woke up early as usual, but he didn't look at me at all. He walked past me in the hallway without a word. Everything had changed, but only he knew the full extent. Helen still got up early to make breakfast, smiling happily as always. She had no suspicions about her husband, still trusting him completely. I looked at my daughter, my heart breaking. What I knew, what I had witnessed, made it impossible to pretend everything was okay anymore. But I couldn't just shatter this family right away either. In the following days, I kept watching Cleo. He became increasingly irritable and quick to anger, especially whenever I mentioned money or work. He never answered directly, always changing the subject, sometimes with nonsense stories or blaming me for my age. But I noticed that every time he did that, he was hiding something too terrible to say aloud. One evening, when the family was gathered around the dinner table, Cleo's tension became obvious. He grabbed food hastily, his eyes flicking quickly to me before looking away. Helen smiled and asked, "What's wrong, Cleo? Are you tired today?" Cleo just nodded, saying nothing more, but I could feel his unease. He was trying to hide something bad, but now I couldn't ignore it anymore. After dinner, when Helen went to do chores, I decided to confront Cleo directly. "Cleo, do you really think you can keep fooling all of us forever?" I said, calm but sharp. Cleo looked up, his eyes frozen when he heard me ask, "What are you saying now?" "Don't accuse me without reason. You stole money from me, and not only that, you treated this family like a game." "Who do you think you are?" He just stood up, pushed the chair back, and walked out. But I knew he heard me. He sensed the change in the air, and he couldn't pretend nothing was wrong. That whole night, I couldn't sleep. Everything kept spinning in my head. I had been betrayed by the one I trusted most in the family. Cleo didn't just take my money. He took away my respect and the respect for this family. He turned this house into a place full of lies and secret schemes. The next morning, I didn't want to hide anymore. I needed to do something to end this deception. I decided to tell Helen everything, with nothing left hidden. But before I could say a word, Cleo came home early, looking tense but silent. He went straight to the bedroom and slammed the door shut. Where did he go again? I asked Helen, my voice unfamiliar, feeling like I wasn't myself in this house. Cleo probably went to work. He said he had urgent business today. Helen answered, still trusting her husband without doubt. She kept living in faith in him, unaware that her husband was the one hurting their family, waiting in silence. I felt like a clock counting down to the moment everything would fall apart. But I needed to prepare more carefully. I needed solid proof and would confront Cleo when everything was clear. That evening, I checked the footage from the hidden cameras again. This time, I discovered another crucial detail. Cleo didn't just take money from my wallet. He also took another item, my car keys. The truth was undeniable. Cleo not only deceived me, but is also deceiving himself. And now I can no longer just stand by and watch. I've reached the point of no return. All the lies and betrayals have made me stand firm and determined to turn things around. The next day, I couldn't sit still anymore. Things have gone too far. I have enough evidence. Cleo not only secretly took my money, but is also hiding dark secrets from his past. I can't stay silent any longer. I need to clear everything up. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the living room, stroking my phone. The videos capturing Cleo's actions over the past 3 weeks were still stored on my phone. Images of him sneaking into my room, taking money, spitting into my glass, then leaving with the car keys in hand. Every time I watched them again, I felt the insult deeply, not just because he took the money, but because of how he treated me like a fool. I decided tonight I would confront Cleo once again, but this time I wouldn't just question him about the lost money. I would uncover the truth behind his actions. Every secret he's hiding will be exposed. I can't live in the dark any longer. Cleo came home close to 11 p.m., tired as usual but showing no sign of worry. He went straight to his room without looking at me. I couldn't ignore that behavior. He tried to keep up his normal facade, but the tension inside me was undeniable. I had a shock ready for him. Not just about the lost money, but about a secret Cleo thought I wouldn't find out. He thought I was just a senile old man, but he was wrong. I've been watching him, and I know everything. I walked up to the bedroom where Cleo was getting ready for bed. At this point, I had no more patience left. I stared at him, forcing him to look up. "Cleo," I said coldly, "you think you can hide everything you've done?" He paused, stunned, a flash of confusion in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" He tried to hide his embarrassment, but I knew he was backed into a corner. I took out my phone and showed him a video. In the video, Cleo was clearly opening my wallet, taking money out, counting it, then putting it into his pocket. The next clip showed him spitting into my glass of water, then walking away without looking back. "What's this?" I asked, holding the phone up in front of him. Cleo looked at the screen, his face turning pale. "What are you doing?" he panted, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "I'm not doing anything. It's fake. You can't believe those things." "Why did you do that, Cleo?" I had no other choice. I just wanted to get out of this situation. Get it out of what situation? I couldn't take it anymore. I was in debt. I couldn't tell Helen. She wouldn't understand, and neither would you. But I was wrong. I know that. His confusion was now obvious. Not because he was caught, but because he couldn't hide the deeper reason behind his actions. "Cleo," I said slowly now, "you stole my money, spat in my drink, lied to this whole family. All you did was because you couldn't face the truth. But you have to understand that nothing can be hidden forever." "I'm sorry. I don't know what to do anymore." Are you going to drag my daughter into your world of lies? The atmosphere in the room thickened. I could feel the tension in every breath he took. Just as I suspected, Cleo was not only a liar, but also a person full of fear and weakness. I stood up without saying another word. I had the answer I needed. And I knew Cleo had nowhere left to run. Cleo sat silently in the room all evening. I knew he was thinking, but he didn't dare speak up. He couldn't do anything anymore. He had sunk too deep into the hole he dug for himself, but I couldn't let this end with vague apologies. This wasn't just about getting the money back. It was about protecting my family's honor, protecting everything I had spent my life building. The next day, when Cleo went out to work again, I began to prepare. Every step I took was carefully planned. I couldn't afford to miss any detail. I had to be sure that when I faced him one last time, I would have undeniable evidence not only of his theft, but also of the lies and contempt he showed toward my family. I drove to the electronics store where I had bought surveillance cameras for my home before. This time, I needed something stronger. I wanted to set up a discreet monitoring system that could record every move Cleo made without him knowing. These devices would help me collect data he couldn't deny, exposing everything in front of Helen. I bought a few cameras that could record at night, connect to my phone, and a large hard drive to store all the evidence. Everything had to be installed perfectly, so Cleo wouldn't detect a thing. Everything had to happen quickly and precisely. Back home, I began installing them in strategic spots Cleo often passed by. I couldn't let him suspect anything. Everything had to look as normal as possible. Cameras were hidden behind paintings in the living room, behind clocks on the walls, and even in the kitchen where Cleo and Helen often gathered. Every step I took was meticulous. Every small detail had to be carefully calculated. I checked all the devices to make sure they were working perfectly. Just one more time, Cleo won't be able to escape the truth. I didn't tell Helen about this plan. She's already been hurt too much. I don't want to make things more complicated, but I know if I don't do this, Cleo will keep deceiving her. She'll never see the truth unless I show it to her firsthand. I kept monitoring Cleo through the recorded videos. He hasn't changed. Same old habits, the same obvious signs. He keeps taking money, keeps buying expensive things, but he has no idea I'm watching his every move. This time, I was fully prepared. A week later, I saw him sneaking into my room again, but this time, I had more than just a hidden camera. I had enough evidence. Cleo opened my wallet again, took the money, counted it carefully, then put it in his pocket. But I knew he wouldn't stop there. He would keep lying, keep living like nothing happened. And I couldn't let that continue. That night, when Cleo came home, I decided to talk to him. But it wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. I was going to show him everything I knew. I was going to show him that nothing can stay hidden forever. I have something to tell you today, I said as Cleo stepped into the living room. He turned around, surprised but trying to stay calm. I don't want to hear any more of your baseless accusations, Cleo replied, his voice a little anxious. So, do you want to see these videos? I continued, my tone unchanged, as if it was just a normal conversation. I pulled out my phone and played the video I had recorded. Cleo was silent, his eyes fixed on the screen, unable to say a word. The footage showed him sneaking into my room, taking money, spitting into a glass, all clearly visible. He couldn't say anything, couldn't hide anymore. Cleo, what have you done? Do you think you can keep going like this forever? I said, each word stabbing at him like a knife. He didn't answer. He just stood there, fists clenched, face pale, unable to look at me. He had nothing left to say. Now that you see it, do you still want to keep lying? I asked, feeling no regret. You can lie to Helen, but you can't lie to me anymore. He understood he had reached a point of no return. Everything he did was exposed, and now there was only one choice: face the truth. Cleo stood there, his face drained of color, silent. The whole room seemed frozen. The only sound our steady breathing. I didn't know what Cleo was thinking, but I could clearly see the fear in his eyes. He had no way left to deny it. Everything was laid out before him, clear and undeniable. I stood still, not rushing, but not letting time slip away uselessly. What have you done, Cleo? Why did you do it? My voice was gentle but cold. He was silent, his hands clenched together. I saw him take a deep breath, as if preparing to explain. But I didn't need an explanation. I had the evidence. I had everything I needed. I just needed him to admit the truth. I don't know what else to say. Cleo finally spoke, his voice choking up. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm just so tired. He paused, then looked at me, eyes full of conflict. I didn't want to hurt Helen, but I had no other choice. I looked at him, silent, letting him continue. She doesn't know what I've fallen into. Debt piling up, work pressure. I just wanted to do something for my family. For her. But I feel like I'm being pushed into a corner, Cleo said, his eyes darkening. I'm not a bad person, but I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I didn't expect Cleo to say those things. He admitted everything, but at the same time, he denied responsibility for his actions. The story about debt and work pressure was just an excuse, a justification for what he did. Why did you take my money? I asked, my voice no longer calm. Why did you lie to this family? Lie to Helen? I don't know. I just wanted enough money to do something. I wanted to buy Helen the things she deserves, the things I couldn't give her. I couldn't bear to see her disappointed anymore. He laughed, but it was a sad smile. I thought no one would find out if I did that. But I was wrong. A sharp pain struck my heart. I could understand Cleo's feelings, a man feeling incapable of taking care of his family, not wanting to hurt the one he loves. But that never justifies lying. It never justifies betrayal. Cleo, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What you did wasn't just taking my money. You broke trust, hurt my daughter, and dragged this whole family into your lies. Do you think you can keep living like this? Cleo looked at me, his eyes full of regret. I don't know what to do anymore. I've hurt everyone, especially Helen. She'll never forgive me. So what are you going to do? I asked, my voice soft but firm. Are you going to keep living this lie? Or are you going to face what you've done? Cleo sat down, hands on his head. I don't know. I want things to go back to how they were. But I also know that's impossible. He sighed, his shoulders slumping as if he had no strength left. That's right, there's no turning back, I said, my voice steadier. You've hurt Helen too much already. But you still have one last chance. Face what you've done and admit the truth to her. He looked at me, his eyes empty. I'm ready to face everything, but I'm afraid of losing it all. Cleo, you'll lose everything if you keep going like this. But if you're truly ready to face the truth, that's your only chance to start over. There's nothing scarier than living in lies, nothing worse than hurting the one you love without knowing how to fix it. Cleo said nothing, just sat there like a man drained of all strength. But I knew the decision had been made. He would have to face the truth, and Helen would have to know everything. No turning back now. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house felt frozen in time. Cleo no longer tried to create a false sense of peace. He stopped lying, stopped making excuses, but the tension lingered in every move he made. Helen, as usual, knew nothing of what was happening. She was still carefree, still thinking everything between us was fine. But I knew everything would change today. Cleo had admitted everything, but he still lacked the courage to face Helen. It had gone on too long, and the truth could no longer be hidden. I was ready for the final confrontation. I wouldn't let Cleo keep hurting this family any longer. I stood by the living room window, looking outside. A cold feeling washed over me, like I was about to face a storm. I didn't know what would happen once everything was exposed, but I couldn't keep living in this lie. Cleo stood behind me, but I didn't turn around. He might be here, but I knew he no longer had the strength to resist. He had run out of all excuses. The lies could no longer cover up the truth. He couldn't pretend anymore. Helen will know everything, I said, my voice calm but full of certainty. And you will face everything you've done. But I could see he was trembling. He knew his life was about to change forever. Everything he's done could no longer be hidden, and everything had fallen apart. Helen went into the kitchen, as usual. She smiled at Cleo, but the smile lasted only a moment. When she saw me standing next to Cleo, worry immediately showed on her face. "Dad, what's going on?" Helen asked, looking confused. "Why are you and Cleo standing like that?" "Sweetheart, I need you to listen to something important," I said gently but seriously. "You need to know a truth I've been reluctant to say for a long time." She looked at Cleo, then back at me, her eyes full of worry. I did something wrong. Cleo finally spoke, his voice tired. "I took money from you, from Dad. I hurt you and my daughter. I was wrong." "Cleo, what are you talking about?" she asked, sounding a bit confused. "What are you saying to Dad?" "I took money from Dad. I lied to you all. I betrayed Dad and my daughter." "No, Cleo, that can't be." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "You can't. What did you do?" "And not only that, he spat into my glass of water," what she stammered. "Cleo, what did you do?" "I'm sorry," he said, his voice deepening. "I don't know what else to do. I've been so wrong." "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you do that?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with anguish. "Cheers." "I don't want to lose you," Cleo replied, but his voice was no longer as confident as before. "I'm afraid you won't understand or forgive me. You broke the trust in this family, hurt my daughter, and now it's time to face the truth." She burst into tears, tears falling as she covered her face, trying to hide the pain inside. "You've lied to me for so long. How could you do that?" she whispered. I stood there silently, but inside I knew that Cleo was no longer the person Helen trusted. Everything he did had been exposed. And now, Cleo has to face the consequences of his actions. "Cleo, you can't keep going like this," I said firmly. "You've hurt this family, and now you have to live with what you've caused." Cleo said nothing, just bowed his head, accepting the truth. Everything has collapsed. And now he must take responsibility for what he has done. Cleo stood silently, not saying a word. Every step he took now felt heavy, as if an invisible weight pressed down on his shoulders. I could see his collapse, not just physically but mentally as well. This whole family has been pushed to the edge, and now he must face the consequences of actions he thought he could hide forever. Helen sat there, still unable to believe what had happened. She looked at Cleo, then at me, as if searching for an explanation, some comfort, but I knew nothing could fix this anymore. It was too late. "Dad, I can't, I just can't believe it," Helen said, her hands clenched, eyes full of tears. She looked at Cleo, her gaze now filled with disappointment. You've lied to me for too long. How could you do that? Cleo didn't answer. He just stood there, expression blank, like a man who had lost all hope. I didn't want to keep hurting Helen, but I knew if I didn't end this now, it would keep threatening our family forever. Cleo, what were you thinking when you did this? I asked, my voice cold but firm. Do you think you can keep lying to me, to this whole family? Cleo didn't dare look at me. He lowered his head, clutching his hands tightly as if trying to hold back tears long shed. I don't know what to do anymore. His voice trembled, completely lacking confidence. I was wrong. I know that. But I can't change what I've done. No, you can change, Cleo, I said, each word like a warning. But you need to face the truth. You have to confront what you caused. That's the only thing you can do now. Cleo couldn't say anything more. He had no more excuses. Every lie, every reason he gave before was meaningless now. Now he had to pay for it all. Helen, I looked at my daughter, my voice softening but still serious. You can't live in this lie anymore. You need to know everything, no matter how painful it is. Dad, I don't know who to trust anymore. This is the truth. Cleo has betrayed us, lied to us, but now it's time to face it and decide how to move forward. He just bowed his head, unable to face the disappointment in her eyes, and that was when everything seemed to fall apart. You took Dad's money, and now you've hurt my family, Helen said, her eyes filled with determination. You did all of that without thinking about me, about Dad, about our family. You made me lose all trust in you. I can't, Cleo stammered, his hands trembling. You can't forgive me. Then she stood up and walked outside. Her footsteps echoed through the quiet house, carrying the pain Cleo had caused. Cleo, you've hurt this family too much, I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. You have no right to harm my daughter anymore. You have to leave. He stood there, arms hanging loose, too weak to resist. He knew that no matter what he did, the truth was already clear. Everything had collapsed. All he could do now was walk away. You don't deserve a place in this family anymore, I said, each word hitting him like a punch. And you must face everything you've done. Leave and never come back. He turned and left the house he once called family. But now, Cleo was no longer the man Helen once loved, nor the son-in-law I once accepted. As he stepped outside, I saw Helen standing at the door, her eyes full of pain. Dad, I don't know what to do. Now it's time for you to move on and believe that justice will always prevail. Cleo left, and the atmosphere in the house grew heavy, as if all strength had been drained away. I sat in the living room, looking out the window where sunlight shone gently and peacefully, but nothing could soothe the wound in my heart. Helen had gone out. She needed time to find her balance, to understand that everything had changed, and to learn to live without Cleo by her side. But I knew, even though the wound remained, life had to go on, and I would not let what happened destroy this family. I had lost a lot over the past months, but I couldn't let Cleo's betrayal take away my dignity. I needed to find myself again, stand strong, and protect what was left. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, a fresh morning, sunlight streaming through the window, but I felt nothing special. I just feel like I've won a major battle, a battle not only against Cleo, but also against myself. I didn't let the pain and hurt sweep me away. I faced the truth. No matter how painful it was, Helen returned home after a long day. She entered the living room silently, just looking at me with a thoughtful gaze. I knew she was confronting the truth, and I also knew she needed time to heal. The pain wasn't because of losing Cleo, but because of the truth she had to face. "Dad, I don't know how to thank you," Helen said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "You did everything, protected this family. I know you didn't want to, but you helped me see the truth." I looked at her, my eyes still full of determination. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what I thought was right. No matter what, you need to learn to live without lies. And no one has the right to break this family." Helen looked at me, her eyes lighting up as if a heavy burden had been lifted. She was beginning to realize that no matter how painful betrayal is, the truth always finds a way to shine through. She couldn't live in lies anymore. "Dad, I think I understand now," Helen said, then sat down beside me. "I will never let myself be deceived again, and I will always believe in our family." I smiled and placed my hand on her shoulder. "That's what matters most. Family is something no one can take away, no matter what. I will always be by your side, and you must also know how to protect the respect within this family." I could feel a change within myself. The past months have taught me a lot. Sometimes, when faced with betrayal, you can't run away. You have to face the truth and find a way to move forward. I can't change what has happened, but I can decide how to deal with it. Since Cleo left, the house has changed. No more lies, no more pretending. Everything is gradually returning to normal, but not the way it was before. This is a new family, one where everyone knows how to appreciate and protect each other. We lost a big part of our past, but we won't let betrayal diminish the true value of family. Cleo may have left the house, but he can't take away my respect. I've regained my self-respect, and more importantly, I helped Helen realize that love and truth are the strongest foundations of this family. "Dad, I will never forget what you've done for me," Helen said, her eyes full of gratitude. "You didn't just protect me. You taught me about resilience, about truth, and about facing every challenge." I looked at her, feeling a deep sense of peace. I didn't need to explain anything more. I did what I believed was right. And now, we can start over, with no more lies, no more wounds left unhealed. This family will be stronger than ever. The next day, after Cleo had left and everything had settled, our house returned to its usual quiet, but it was no longer the same home as before. It had become a new place, a space free of deceit, free of the shadows of betrayal. Both Helen and I felt that change, even though we didn't know what the future held. Helen stood by the living room window, looking out with a thoughtful gaze. She seemed to be trying to find her balance, while I sat quietly, hands on the table, gazing at the family photos, the memories that had been with me my whole life. This familiar scene still brought me peace, but inside, there was a strange feeling. I knew life would never be the same again. Not just because of Cleo, but because I had seen the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, is something you can't deny. "Dad," Helen called softly but with determination, "I want to do something. I want to start over, not just for myself, but for you too. I want you to know that I understand everything, and I have no regrets." She had grown up, able to face the truth and accept everything that had happened. Although her heart still ached, she didn't let that pain cloud her reason and determination. "Where do you want to go?" I asked gently, my voice filled with respect. "I want to go to the place Mom loved. I want to start over, but also keep the beautiful memories Mom and Dad made. Even though we lost an important part of our lives, we still have precious things: family, love, and dignity. I know my daughter will never allow herself to live in lies again, and that makes me prouder of her than anything else." "All right, my dear, if you want to go, I will always be by your side. And I will learn how to start over too." I smiled, feeling peace slowly return to my heart. Although Cleo's betrayal cost us a lot, it also helped me realize the value of what I still have. That day we didn't say much. Helen packed a few things, preparing for the trip she had long dreamed of. It was a new beginning for her and an end to a chapter in my life. A chapter without lies, without the ghosts of the past. I watched my daughter leave, then turned back to the house I once called home. It wasn't the same anymore, no Cleo. No more nights filled with conflict and deception. But it was still my home, and I would find a way to make it peaceful again. A place where I could live honestly, free from fear of betrayal. After Helen left, I sat in the living room, looking at the family pictures on the wall. Helen's mother had passed away long ago, but memories of her still lingered in every corner of the house. I suddenly recalled the times we laughed together, those happy days I thought would never end. But now everything had changed, and I knew we would move forward, no matter how hard the road ahead. I stood up and stepped outside, taking a deep breath. The fresh spring air makes me feel relieved. Life goes on, even though sometimes it hurts me. But I've learned something important. Justice isn't always about revenge or violence. Justice is truth, the ability to face what has happened and accept it. Justice is the dignity each person must preserve, no matter the cost. When I returned to the house, I no longer felt pain, and I no longer felt like a victim. I feel stronger, more confident, because I faced the truth and didn't let it destroy me. Sometimes, when facing betrayal, we can't change the past, but we can choose how to live on. And that's what matters most. I've regained respect, not just from my family, but from myself as well.